Have you ever wondered what would happen if one man stood alone against an entire nation and fire answered from heaven? This is the unforgettable story of Elijah, a man who feared God more than kings, a prophet whose prayers stopped the rain, whose faith shook kingdoms, and whose life proved that even when the whole world turns away from God, one faithful person can change history forever. Long ago, in the land of Israel, there was a time when darkness spread across the nation. It was not darkness because the sun had stopped shining. It was a darkness that had settled deep into the hearts of the people. They had forgotten the God who had rescued their ancestors, who had parted the Red Sea, and who had given them a beautiful land flowing with milk and honey. Instead of worshiping the true God, many people bowed before lifeless idols made by human hands. The greatest of these false gods was Baal. The people believed Baal controlled the rain, the crops, and the seasons. They built altars for him, offered sacrifices, and prayed to him for blessings. But Baal could not hear them. He could not speak. He could not save anyone. The man leading Israel into this terrible sin was King Ahab. He was one of the most powerful kings Israel had ever known, but he was also one of the most wicked. Instead of leading the people toward God, he encouraged them to worship Baal. Beside him stood his wife, Queen Jezebel, a woman feared throughout the kingdom. She was determined to erase the worship of the true God. She hunted God's prophets and ordered many of them to be killed. As fear spread through the land, many faithful people went into hiding. It seemed as if no one was left to stand for God. But God had not forgotten his people. Far away from the royal palace lived a man named Elijah. He was not famous. He was not rich. He wore rough clothing and lived a simple life. Yet inside him burned an unshakable faith. He trusted God completely. One day, the Lord spoke to Elijah with a clear command. Go to King Ahab. Without hesitation, Elijah obeyed. The journey to the palace was long. Dust covered his feet as he walked along rocky paths. Villagers stared at him, wondering where he was going. Soldiers guarded the roads, and everyone knew approaching the king without permission could be dangerous. Still, Elijah continued. He was not walking because of courage alone. He was walking because he believed that when God gives a command, obedience is more important than fear. When Elijah finally stood before King Ahab, the royal court became silent. The king sat proudly on his throne, surrounded by soldiers, advisors, and priests of Baal. Wealth and power filled the palace, but God's presence did not. Everyone looked at the stranger standing before the throne. Elijah did not bow to the idols. He did not flatter the king. He looked directly at Ahab and declared with confidence, "As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain during the next few years except at my word." The room fell silent. No rain. In Israel, rain meant life. Rain watered the fields, filled the rivers, fed the animals, and kept families alive. Without rain, crops would die, wells would dry up, and famine would spread across the land. It sounded impossible, but Elijah was speaking the words God had given him. Before anyone could stop him, Elijah turned and walked away. King Ahab's face burned with anger. How dare this prophet challenge him? How dare he insult Baal, the so-called god of storms? The king ordered his men to find Elijah. But by then, God had already given his prophet another command. Leave this place. Go east and hide near the brook Cherith. Elijah obeyed immediately. The brook flowed quietly through the wilderness. Tall rocks surrounded the stream, and trees provided shade from the burning sun. No crowds were there. No palace. No applause. Only Elijah and God. Soon the skies changed. Days passed. Then weeks. Not a single drop of rain fell. The ground became hard and cracked. Rivers shrank. Crops withered beneath the hot sun. Farmers watched helplessly as their fields turned brown. Animals wandered desperately, searching for water that no longer existed. Fear spread across Israel. The people cried out to Baal, But nothing happened. Their God remained silent. Meanwhile, Elijah stayed hidden beside the brook. Every morning and every evening, something incredible happened. Ravens flew through the sky carrying bread and meat in their beaks. They landed near Elijah, dropped the food before him, and flew away again. No human delivered the meals. God used wild birds to feed his servant. Elijah drank fresh water from the brook and ate the food God faithfully provided each day. He learned an important lesson. When God guides his people, he also provides for them. Even in the wilderness, even during famine, even when no one else understands. But as the drought continued, the brook slowly began to dry. Each morning,